Welcome everybody, this is Jared Champion with Champion Writing Works. We're back for big number 2. That didn't come out right. We're back for the second installment of this video series. The method, this is how I teach my students how to write papers, how I write my own papers. And you might be wondering to yourself why exactly I'm wearing sunglasses, and the answer is simple. My future's so bright, I have to wear shade. You should be wearing shades too. So stick around, let's go ahead and put that central question we built from video number 1. Let's put that to work here in video number 2, building evidence databases. The long vowel A sound, database, not databases. There are no dads here, only dad jokes. Live with it. Great news for everybody out there. I've gone out, maybe stole. I have a prize here. For the first 100 subscribers, I will be drawing a name out of a hat. It's a pretty sweet watch. It's probably a trash watch. Look, look, look. It has these knobs. They don't do anything. This is my favorite part. See those other little dials on that thing? They don't even move. They're not real. They're stuck, like me. Last time we talked, we put together a really great central question. And that central question, we talked about all sorts of things, like the ampersand project, or the ampersand exercise, the ampersand question. We put together great questions, talked about all the different characteristics of a really great question. And so if you haven't seen that video, you're going to need to go back. Go watch that video. If you try to do this step without putting together a great central question, you will struggle mightily. However, with a great central question, things will be very straightforward, not necessarily easy. Paper writing will never be easy, but the question is, can we make it something that is manageable or feasible? The next step will become clearer and clearer every step you go. For this part of the process, we are going to work with a central question that I've created for this novel, The Blind Assassin by Margaret Atwood. If you're not familiar with Margaret Atwood, you should be, and if you think you might be familiar, you probably know her from the hit series The Handmaid's Tale. And if you've not seen that TV show, get out from under your rock, get your Hulu subscription, turn it on, because it is so good. So good. In fact, I'm wearing this red sweater vest as an homage to The Handmaid. That's not true. Probably not even an okay joke. This one won the Booker Prize. They didn't even try. If she's writing books, obviously she's a booker, so every prize she wins is for bookers. Today we will use the question, how do labor and gender interact in Margaret Atwood's The Blind Assassin? It's a great central question because chances are good you may have some of your classmates who will choose the labor question. How does labor work? Chances are even better, many of your peers will choose the question about gender, but nobody in your class will likely pair those two together. In fact, at the start of the process, you don't even have to have read the novel to start this next step. This is critical. So many people start asking those questions after they've gone through the material their paper is about, and that's not necessary at all. In fact, if you talk to your professors and say, hey, Dr. So-and-so, what do you study? They will say something like, I like to research questions of identity and gender. I'm really working hard to figure out what's going on with the environment and how do we fix it. I'm asking questions about how we can safely move into the future when the earth is on fire. You see, for your professors, when they start looking at some new material, they already know exactly which questions they want to ask about that material. And the same can be true for you before you begin your project. Decide on a great question, and when you start looking through your book, your movie, or the results from your experiments, you can figure out exactly what you're looking for and really save quite a bit of time by only looking for evidence that helps you answer that question. You don't have to wait until the very end of going through your exhibit material to decide on your question. In fact, it's often way easier and way more effective if you have that question before you even look at your material, because then you know exactly what you're looking for. When you find it, you can highlight it. Even better, you can always change. These questions aren't set in stone. You're not married to them. You're not locked to them. Pivot as needed. So don't feel that need to wait until the end to figure out what you're going to write about. So there you are. You've got your great central question and you're ready to begin collecting evidence to put into your database. So what do? Pick up your text, whatever it may be. If it's a novel, start reading it. If it's a film, say you're in a film class or maybe a television class, you turn on Netflix Netflix or whatever program you watch programs on. I just said programs like I'm my grandmother. Just start looking for any pieces of evidence that might help you answer that question. If you are in the sciences, run your experiments and start looking for the information you are hoping to cull from those experiments, whatever it is. And I've gone ahead and collected just a handful of pieces of evidence from The Blind Assassin I believe could help me answer the question, how do labor and gender interact in the novel The Blind Assassin by Margaret Atwood? So let's take a peek real quick. So this is what it looks like when you begin working on your database. My central question, of course, you can see up top there, how does gender and labor interact in The Blind Assassin by Margaret Atwood? When I go to build a database, I start with that question first. Step 1, don't miss it. Build your question. Go ahead and pause it for a moment, take a look at each of these quotes and notice 2 features are present in each of them. There's some element of gender. It may just be something like father. We've got one that says motherly in it. Each quote also has some type of labor, whatever that labor may be. There's a pregnancy in the novel, and if you've ever had a baby or lived on the planet Earth where people do have babies, we often say women go into labor. So if we're writing a paper on gender and labor and the character goes into labor, that needs to go in here too. You may use it, you may not. If anything could possibly go into your paper in a million years, you want it to go into this document. Another big important piece of this, you need to hand type this. Hand type. You want to copy and paste. It's going to save you so much time if you copy and paste instead of hand typing. Wrong. Dead wrong, in fact. If you hand type it, you will start to see patterns more clearly, more familiar with the material, and you will remember these quotes and passages of evidence much more clearly. So it may seem like you're going to save a lot of time by copying and pasting. What I can tell you from personal experience, copying and pasting actually takes a lot longer. Hand type it. Everything that you could possibly put into this database, anything that could help you answer that question, not will, anything that could help you answer that question needs to go here in the database, and you need to hand type it. Really important rule for your databases, you need your database to be as long as your finished paper. If your paper assignment is to write a 10-page paper, you need 10 pages of evidence. You're not going to use 10 pages of evidence. In fact, chances are really good that you are only going to use about 2 pages of evidence, because your analysis and your argument and your development of that argument needs to be about 70 to 80% of the paper. 20 to 30% of that can be evidence. So if you have too much evidence in your paper, it's not going to be great. Well, Jared, why then are you having me write 10 pages of evidence? Oh, I'm going to tell you why. So imagine I told you that your job was to go out and make 12 perfectly cut cookies using cookie cutters and dough. And you were given just enough dough to make sure that you could complete 12 cookies. Just enough. If you made one single mistake, they wouldn't all turn out perfectly. That's going to be a really tough ask. Even for an expert baker, that's going to be a really tough ask. Alternately, imagine that I said, go make 12 perfectly cut out cookies using a cookie cutter, and here's so much dough that you can afford to make a lot of mistakes, and you can afford to mess up a lot of that dough, and you can mess up some cookies, but by the end, all you really need are 12 perfectly cut cookies using cookie cutter and dough. The second one is clearly going to be much more likely to yield a successful product and 12 perfectly cut cookies. Think of that the same way with the evidence. You want so much evidence, you can afford to mess up a little, you can afford to leave some out, you can afford to choose just the best pieces of it at the end of your project. You are going to be all set with so much really great evidence. You can use only the best evidence that connects really closely to each other, and you can get rid of all the rest. It might seem like just limping over that hurdle is the best way to go to make sure that you have enough evidence, just by getting barely enough to finish your paper and have your final paper be composed of roughly 20 to 30% of that evidence that you found. But if you don't leave yourself some margin for error, that's going to be very, very difficult, even if you were a pro baker. And in this example, a pro baker would be a scholar. You would have to be absolutely perfect to do this. I've been working in this field for about 20 years, and I have never in my lifetime completed anything completely perfectly, which I know is a surprise because you're looking at me and you're thinking, if anything is the icon of perfection, it's you. You're probably right that I'm as close to perfect as possible, and I still can't do it. So if I can't do it, leave yourself that margin for error and give yourself lots and lots more evidence than you will ever possibly need. If we think back to that idea of the attorney as well, if you were an attorney about to try a case, do you want lots of evidence, or do you want just barely enough that if you were perfect, you would finish that case as strongly as possible? The answer is fairly clear. So do a great job on this database. Do your absolute best, go above and beyond, because the better job you do here, the better and more efficiently you are going to be able to finish that final project. This is the review remix. I want to wrap up here. I want us to refresh just the basic rules so that you can walk away knowing the basic principles of the database assignment. You need to have a clearly defined central question. You need to know what it is you're asking, and you need to know the exhibit source or the primary materials you are asking that question about. Number two, if you ask whether or not something should or shouldn't be included in your database, the answer is always yes. Always yes. Think of yourself a little bit like a crime scene investigator. If you walk into a crime scene and you see something that might help solve the case, you are absolutely going to collect it. Same thing holds true here. Rule number 3, hand type, if at all humanly possible, every entry in the database. If you are physically capable of hand typing your entries, you are going to do so. Do not copy and paste. Do not copy and paste. If you copy and paste into your database, I will hunt you down in the streets like a rabid dog. I won't really. It seems like a shortcut, but it's not a shortcut. It actually takes significantly longer. Number 4, the database needs to be the same length as your anticipated final product. If you are writing a 10-page paper, you need a 10-page database. If you're writing a 25-page journal article, great. Your database needs to be the same length as whatever the word count is for that journal. Whatever it is, make it the same length. And that way you know when you sit down to write, you have enough to say that will get you to page length. But the more you have, the better your life will be from here. Finally, do not include any interpretation. Only observation. Don't say something was fast, slow, pretty, or ugly. Instead, focus specifically and primarily on putting in great quotes. Quotes are really great because they're concrete, and when we get to further steps down the road, they give you something that you can analyze concretely. Let's talk about some next level upgrades. We're going to up our game. This is the portion where we take those janky rims, put on some spinners as if they're still in style. This is how you upgrade that database to be that next level. I've got 3 of them for you. Free, by the way. You're welcome. Use the database as your opportunity to build your formatted bibliography or works cited list. When you go to put something in that database, go ahead and format your bibliography. This is a great opportunity for you because it's on the front end of the project. We often wait till the end because nobody likes to do it, and then you get to the end and you race, probably use one of those garbage online generators that never does it correctly. You lose points because of it. Don't lose points because of it. Actually start each citation in the database with a formatted bibliography citation that you can copy and paste into your final product. That will save you a lot of time and headache, and it's going to make your final product that much better. If you're in graduate school, this is even more important because chances are very, very strong you will use the same citation again and again and again. So having it in a space where you can copy and paste it into your projects as you use it, even better. Upgrade number 2. If your exhibit is video, turn on the closed captions. Those can be a very helpful source for pulling great quotes and for recognizing things, especially if you are prone to tuning in and out a little bit, which we all are because we're human, except for you in the back. I see you, robot people. Keep watching. I'll teach you too. For the humans in the crowd, having those closed captions present will really help you to stay focused and to help you see those places where you might have some evidence that can go in your database. Upgrade number 3, pay somebody to write the paper for you. Don't do that. I'm not really recommending that. That is a terrible idea for a million different reasons. If you didn't know that was a joke, we need to talk. Upgrade number 3, the real one, the realness, the real deal. This is it. If you are putting together your database and you start to notice patterns, make note of, maybe keep a small section in the bottom of your database where you start to notice some patterns. In the database that I showed you just a moment ago, we had a couple of different patterns that started to emerge. And if you go back to that one, you'll notice that we had 2 different types of parents. We had the one example with the father and the one example with the woman being described as mother, parents being described in the workplace. That seems significant. More than this though, both of them are the bosses of their respective workplace. That gives us even more space to start working on that. And then when you go back and look again, you'll notice that we have this parenting pattern that's starting to emerge. They're both the bosses in their workplace, and one of them talks about how he promises to give starvation wages. And the other one talks about how she's going to recommend that the person needs to get plump and needs to fill up and get bigger. Those are really important because they contrast the way that 2 different bosses differ by way of gendered lines. If you think you're starting to hear a thesis emerge, You're darn right. We're gonna wait a minute. I've got a dog who is she is slurping. She is hitting that water. Do you hear my pup in the background? I don't know if you know much about Newfoundlands, but they drink water a little bit like a ceiling fan in the bathtub. I don't recommend it, but that's kind of what it sounds like. She's still going. I think she's almost done. That pretty well covers it for the database portion of the method. Remember to like and subscribe so I can keep you up to date and keep you moving along throughout this difficult semester, putting together the best work of your entire life so that you can be entered to win that very sweet watch that is basically a garbage watch. Remember also to send along your questions in the comment section just down below. I'd love to hear what you'd like me to talk about in these videos because the method is just one piece of what I do here at Champion Writing Works. So send me your questions, and if you want to talk a little bit about specific questions, send those along to me as well. I'd love to hear what you have to say. If you're not my current student, then I would encourage you to check out my link below. I've got a little bit of my first piece of merch. So if you've ever thought to yourself, sure, this is easy when you talk about it, and if your mean mug were just staring at me as I did my work, I'd be able to finish my paper a lot more easily. If you've thought that, I've got great news for you. My first piece of merchandise, the Jared Champion Mean Mug. Pick yours up today. This woman got one, and she's enjoying her pumpkin spice latte as she works on her paper. She's writing me a letter actually telling me how incredibly helpful I was and how I've inspired her to greater horizons. You can be inspired too.